Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championship, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Arnel De Leon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whether you live in the States or internationally, I hope you are doing well for yourself. This past Saturday night was UFC Fight Night. Derek Brunson versus Edmen Shahbazyan. This fight was a very, very exciting fight here. This was initially going to be the co-main event, then was bumped up to main event, and also because of this sudden shift in the lineup here, the fight was not a 5-round fight. It was not a 5-round fight, and instead, it was a 3-round fight, and thank goodness it was a 3-round fight because Derek Brunson only needed 3 rounds to go defeat Edmen Shahbazyan. So Edmen Shahbazyan was coming to this fight, a lot of hype behind him. Really, a whole lot of hype. I was kind of in between him. Derek Brunson has about 10 years, over 10 years, experience as it pertains to fighting and in age. Edmen Shahbazyan came to this fight 11-0. Derek Brunson came to this fight 20-7. So the huge experience gap here. But Derek Brunson versus Edmen Shahbazyan. Derek Brunson ended up defeating Edmen Shahbazyan at the 3rd round, 26 seconds in. And when I look at this fight, I compare it to Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman. And what I mean by that is that in the middleweight title fight between Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold was obviously destroying, dismantling, demolishing Chris Weidman. He got him to the ground, started laying these insane ground and pounds. And if the referee would have stopped the fights, then, you know what, it would have helped Chris Weidman. It really would have. Because if the fight lasted just 3 to 7 seconds longer, Luke Rockhold could have easily destroyed Chris Weidman even more, and Weidman would have lost via TKO. The only reason why Weidman was able to survive past the 2nd round was because the referee was like, alright, you know what? Keep going, keep fighting, and then the bell saved him. The referee and the bell saved Weidman. If the fight went on for 5 more seconds, 3 more seconds, 10 more seconds, Luke Rockhold would have won that fight via KO in the 2nd round. But instead of that happening, we had Luke Rockhold knocking out Chris Weidman in the ground in the 3rd round. And I thought to myself, was there really a reason for the 3rd round? Was there a point for there to be a 3rd round, considering that there was no way Chris Weidman could have recovered from the beating he had from Luke Rockhold in the end of the 2nd round? And I thought the same way. I was thinking the same way for Shahbazyan versus Derek Brunson here. And that Derek Brunson was on top of Shahbazyan. Brunson laying some ground and pound, cutting up Edmen Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan obviously being out of it. And then the bell and the referee saved him. Bell and referee saved him, which then extended the fight going into the 3rd round. What happened in the 3rd round? Derek Brunson got knocked down on Shahbazyan, did some more ground and pound, and I thought to myself that fight should have ended earlier. It really should have. I'm going to bring up the fight stats here. So Derek Brunson landed 65% of his shots. 107 out of 164 total strikes. 88 out of 145 significant strikes. 60.7%. The dude landed 60% of his shots. impressive. And also the takedowns. Derek Brunson can definitely strike. His wrestling game is very underrated here, but his wrestling game is good enough to defeat somebody like Edmen Shahbazyan, who primarily is a striker here. So although Brunson is definitely not the best wrestler in the world, far from being the best wrestler in the middleweight division, Brunson had just enough, and Edmen Shahbazyan's lack of experience defending the takedown and wrestling with people at the highest level, that stopped Shahbazyan. So while Derek Brunson landed 65% of his total strikes, Edmen Shahbazyan landed 50% of his strikes, which sounds good, right? Shahbazyan, he landed 50% of strikes, really good accuracy, and guess what? Edmen Shahbazyan's best round was in the first round. One could argue that Edmen Shahbazyan could have possibly won the first round. I didn't think so, but that was his best round. But now compare Edmen Shahbazyan's total strikes compared to Derek Brunson. Edmen Shahbazyan's strikes, 38 out of 75. 38 out of 75. Compare that to Derek Brunson's 107 out of 164. Edmen Shahbazyan landed 35 of 72 significant strikes. Edmen Shahbazyan attempted less significant strikes than Derek Brunson landed. Shahbazyan, 0 for 0 for takedowns. Derek Brunson, 4 of 8 for takedowns. Once again, Edmen Shahbazyan's best round was in the first. But after that, well, it didn't really help him. Well, it didn't. And so I'm thinking about this round. Derek Brunson, I really felt like Derek Brunson is about, he's always 2-3 fights away from, getting up in the rankings here. The dude pretty much got placed as the gatekeeper, and I'm really surprised about that. I really didn't think he would be trapped as a gatekeeper role. But apparently he is. So right now, I'm looking for the rankings right now for these fighters here. Where can we expect Derek Brunson to move up here? So going to the rankings here, of course, we have Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. That's going to be a possibility. And also, it's been rumored contracts were offered to Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa, but now it is official. It's 1 week before my birthday, September 19th, 2020, is going to be Paulo Costa versus Israel Adesanya. 2 undefeated fighters. Adesanya, who I believe is a true superstar. Paulo Costa looks like a superstar. Looks insane. Looks like a jacked supermodel guy. I still remember watching Paulo Costa against Johnny Hendricks. I was at a bar watching this fight. And everyone in the crowd hated Paulo Costa. I was looking at Twitter, like, why do we play Paulo Costa? And then there's an image that popped up. It's like, Johnny Hendricks is the dad. Paulo Costa is that good-looking guy your girlfriend told you to not worry about. And I'm like, yeah, this guy looks like a heel. He really does. And people in the bar, like, they're all like drunk. We're all yelling at stuff at the TV screen, even though it's the TV screen. All the guys are calling Paulo Costa a pretty boy. We're all cheering for Johnny Hendricks. Paulo Costa, he didn't do anything. All he had to do was stand there. And there's like a large group of people who hate him. And Paulo Costa apparently is clean. He's a clean-cut fighter. He doesn't take any enhancements, which is strange considering the fact, if you follow Paulo Costa on his Instagram, that dude looks like a freak monster, man, I'm being honest with you. That dude is a genetic jackhammer. That dude is so jacked. It's insane. Oh, there's an interesting one here. Robert Whittaker has another fight coming up. He's fighting against number 5th ranked Jared Cannonier. Cannonier. So, Jared against Robert Whittaker. Jared has had a victory over the likes of Jack Hermason. Really good bout there. He defeated David Branch. He defeated Anderson Silva. Wow, Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. Who would win that bout? I'm placing the safe money always on Robert Whittaker. But Jared Cannonier, he's a different beast. He really is. I would have loved to see Jared Cannonier against Darren Till. That's a matchup I think would go a little bit more back and forth. But in this scenario, I say Robert Whittaker is a safe pick. They're going to be fighting the month right after Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. And it's going to be on, October 24th. Ooh, spooky. And so I'm looking down the list here. Darren Till, he's got no matchup coming up. Kelvin Gastelum. Man, there are a lot of things happening. So, we have Yo Romero, Darren Till, and Kelvin Gastelum. Those three fighters have not been doing well for themselves in the middleweight rankings. Kelvin Gastelum lost 3 in a row. Darren Till, he's lost 2 of his past 3. Good showing by Till against Robert Whittaker. But Darren Till has dropped himself down in the rankings here. He has Jack Hermansson and Jared Cannonier ranking above him now. And then we have Yo Romero. People love Yo Romero. I love Yo Romero. I think the guy is awesome. He's a great, entertaining fighter. Interesting personality. There's no one like him at all in the UFC roster. And he's coming up a 3-fight losing streak. Now, he's lost his past 3 fights, but these 3 fighters are insanely good. Israel Adesanya, Paulo Costa, Robert Whittaker. It still baffles me knowing that Yo Romero got a title fight despite losing his past 2 fights. That's crazy. It really is. Oh wow, it's a really good, fun one. Chris Weidman against Omari Akhmedov. Chris Weidman has had a tough go for the past couple of years here. They're going to be fighting August 8th, just 4 days from now. Him against Omari. Weidman versus Omari. I'm picking on Omari to win this. I know Chris Weidman, former champion, awesome wrestler. But the way how things are going on right now for Weidman, it's always been going down here. And Omari, he's got a victory over Zach Cummings, Tim Bosch, and Ian Hemenish. 3 really tough, strong gatekeepers here. I think Omari's going to defeat Weidman. I think Omari's going to go defeat Weidman. It'll be the biggest victory of his career, and that's going to bump him up to the top 10 rankings. And what about Derek Brunson and Edmen Shahbazyan? 2 fighters who just recently fought. What's next for them? Brunson's got a long way to go before he gets a title fight. He really does. If I were the UFC booker, I would place Brunson versus Gastelum or Darren Till. The best fight here, if like the most exciting fight, Jack Hermansson versus Brunson. Jack Hermansson versus Derek Brunson would easily be the most exciting matchup to make. For both fighters, honestly. But right now, I'm thinking Jack Hermansson versus Romero, Jack Hermansson versus the winner of Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier. Those are real possibilities here. And if those are the possibilities, we might think about Derek Brunson against Kelvin Gastelum or Derek Brunson against Darren Till. Either way, those matchups are going to be incredibly fun to watch. Uriah Hall is still in the top 10. It always seems that Uriah Hall is still in the top 10. The middleweight rankings is very bizarre. In the sense that you have fighters who, if you look at their track record, shouldn't be ranked all that high. I'm a firm believer that if you're ranked in the top 10, that must mean you had multiple fights winning going in. But wow, there's some strange, very questionable rankings here. Really are. So I say Derek Brunson against Kelvin Gastelum or Darren Till. I would prefer Jack Hermansson versus Derek Brunson. We got Jared Cannonier against Robert Whittaker coming up on October 24th. Spooky. I say Cannonier? No. It's such a tough matchup because either fighter can win this thing. Safe pick, Robert Whittaker. And then Paulo Costa, middleweight title fight against Adesanya, coming up September 19th. That's going to be a real fun fight there. Who would win in that matchup? It has to be one of more predictable fights. Now, who do I personally want to win? I think Israel Adesanya is going to defeat Paulo Costa. Off the basis, I think Israel Adesanya's length, his ability to counterpunch. But man, because I gotta compare both of these fighters and how they fought against Yo Romero, because because both those fighters just recently fought against Yo Romero. So how did Costa do against Yo Romero? Well, to be honest, Yo Romero versus Paulo Costa was the best fight of the night when they fought. It was a magnificent, awesome fight. Costa versus Yo Romero was the reason why everyone was excited for Adesanya versus Yo Romero. Because we thought, oh man, dude, if Costa, this big Terminator robot guy, is fighting like this against Romero, can you imagine Romero fighting against somebody as quick and as fun to watch as Adesanya? And then they both just didn't really do anything. So Costa versus Adesanya, I'll tell you right now, this fight pretty much will be Paulo Costa pressuring on Adesanya. It'll be Costa pressuring on Adesanya, and Adesanya is going to fight the smart fight. He's going to poke him with leg kicks, body kicks. But Israel Adesanya is so good and so slick with his body movements that I just can't see Paulo Costa doing that much damage on Adesanya. So, as a prediction here, I say Adesanya is going to defeat Paulo Costa by decision. That's my prediction. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So I'm going to quickly talk over UFC Fight Night, Brunson versus Shahbazyan here. I'm going to give you some quick highlights. Joanne Calderwood lost to Jennifer Maia. Huge upset. Huge upset here. Jennifer Maia was able to go and defeat Joanne Calderwood by submission. First round, 4 minutes and 29 seconds in via armbar. A huge, massive upset there. And I feel really bad for Joanne Calderwood here. Because Calderwood, she was next in line to fight against Valentina Shevchenko. She was right there. She was gonna fight Valentina, but because of circumstances that Joanne Calderwood can't really control, I'm looking at the women's fight rankings right now. Everything is such a jumbled mess right now. But Calderwood was gonna fight Valentina Shevchenko. Valentina, she's currently rehabbing an injury. And Joanne Calderwood is like, okay, I have to go fight somebody because these fighters, they gotta make some money somehow. If there are no fights for them, how can they make money? They can't. So Joanne Calderwood is like, okay, I can either hold out my title fight against Valentina and not make any money in the year 2020, or I can go fight somebody like Jennifer Maia, because Jennifer Maia's opponents pulled out. And also you would think, well, you know, stepping in, you might be in the UFC's graces, you might get a bonus maybe. So Calderwood told herself, okay, you know what, I need to make money somehow. I'm going to defeat Jennifer Maia. I think I'm good enough to defeat Jennifer Maia. She just recently came off a loss against Katlyn Chookagian. So Maia versus Joanne Calderwood, this was a last minute fight. Both fighters had about 1 week prep time. Actually, more or less, Jennifer Maia had more prep time here because Jennifer Maia, she was prepping up for somebody else. She was going in, she was training. Joanne Calderwood was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna sign the contract. I'm your new opponent. I haven't been training as much as you in the past month, but you know what? I'm gonna be an extra opponent. So Jennifer Maia versus Joanne Calderwood. Immediately, Maia looked awesome. Jennifer Maia looked awesome in the fight here. So I'm gonna bring up the quick fight stats here. But immediately when the second the bell rang, you could tell based on posture, based on body movement, on how the fighters were really feeling for the fights. Jennifer Maia just looked like she was more game ready. So Jennifer Maia was able to win the fight via submission here. But if you look at the total strikes here, I'm really surprised about the total strikes. So Joanne Calderwood landed 58% of her strikes, 33 of 57, landed 26 of 49, 53% of her strikes, and had a takedown. But here's the part. I don't know why Joanne Calderwood was given the award for a takedown, because, yeah, Calderwood was able to go shoot in, went for a takedown onto Jennifer Maia, and then she fell over to Maia, but Maia was able to go and push reversed the momentum, and then she was able to get on top on Joanne Calderwood. So I don't think you should ever reward a fighter for a takedown if the result within just mere seconds, mere 2 seconds into the takedown, they're reversed. Now compare this to Jennifer Maia. So I just talked about Joanne Calderwood's stats here. Jennifer Maia landed 63% of her strikes, 31 of 49. She was only 2 total strikes shy from Calderwood, while also attempting 8 less strikes. For significant strikes, Jennifer Maia landed 20 of 37, Joanne Calderwood 26 of 49, and Jennifer Maia just needed 1 submission attempt, and she was able to go pull off the armbar on Joanne Calderwood. And apparently, according to the sources here, Dana White says it's going to be Jennifer Maia versus Valentina Shevchenko. When is that fight going to happen? I'm unsure. I'm unsure of when that fight's going to happen. I don't know what the current status is for Valentina. All we know, though, is that she is expected to go and fight against Valentina. So Joanne Calderwood, she responded to this. I do feel bad for Joanne Calderwood, but I also understand why she did this. Joanne Calderwood didn't even need to fight against Jennifer Maia. She didn't. She could have just said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to hold out for my title fights. But had COVID, the pandemic going on right now, things are very strange. In an Instagram post, Joanne Calderwood addressed the defeat as well as her health scare. Because apparently Joanne Calderwood, she passed out backstage after the fights. Really scary. She says, well, that was a rough fight. That was a rough night at the office, Calderwood wrote. Congratulations to Jennifer Maia. I'm grateful for my family, friends, and fans that are here to help me pick up, for me to pick up back up in this crazy life that we all share. It's a fight. Every day we all fight, but it's not every day it goes our way. Thanks to all the UFC staff, the medics, the docs at UFC, at UMC. Oh, and my knight in shining armor, Big Wood MMA, S702. Sorry for scaring you, babe. And then Joanne Calderwood's, her Instagram image is her giving the middle finger. Really funny. It really is. Okay, it's funny that she has a sense of humor about it, but it's scary knowing that she passed out. Yikes. Major yikes. But yet, so it's coming in from BloodyElbow.com that Dana White says Jennifer Maia will get next title shot against Valentina Shevchenko. Shugon says, yeah, that's the fight. I have a lot of respect for Joanne Calderwood. She's been working hard, taking her career very serious, and has been back on track since she moved to Vegas. Jennifer looked damn good tonight, so it makes sense for her and Valentina to fight. And Valentina Shevchenko says, see you soon, Jennifer Maia. But then again, I don't really trust these fighters for the most part. I really don't. Every time there's a fighter that says, you know what, I'm open to fight you, I'm open to fight X, I'm open to fight Y, until it's signed on the contract and it's officially made, I don't really buy it. Because Valentina Shevchenko, she taunted Katlyn Chookagian even after their fight. She taunted Joanne Calderwood. We all thought that fight was going to be happening. But no, it didn't happen. So Jennifer Maia, congratulations for you. Hopefully things go well for Joanne Calderwood in her personal health. So yeah, she fainted and was taken to the hospital following UFC loss. There's also another fighter who also passed out. Yikes, scary. Very scary, especially during, 2020 right now, when healthcare is right now at the forefront of most importance for people right now. And another fight here, by the way, Vicente Luque, I always say this, Vicente Luque, you should watch all his fights. All of them. You are gonna see a spectacular, fun fight, a warrior battle, when you see Vicente Luque fighting at somebody. So it was Luque against Randy Brown. Here's what Vicente Luque reminds me of. He reminds me a whole lot of the Diaz brothers. This no-nonsense, tanky guy, doesn't look all that built, looks like a really ordinary looking person, and then when they get in the octagon, man, they're killers. A definite killer. Vicente Luque's last recent fight, which I said was a fight of the year candidate. But if Vicente Luque had fought somebody recently, and it was an incredibly fun fight, and I tell people to go watch it. So it's Nico Price. So if none of you have watched it yet, one of the candidates for best fight of the year is Nico Price against Vicente Luque. That fight was a complete barn burner. 3 rounds of action. Lequay ended up winning that fight via 3 minutes and 37 seconds in. And in this matchup here at the UFC Fight Night this past Saturday, Vicente Lequay was able to go knock out Randy Brown in a great scrap fight. A really huge scrap battle here. Not all that pretty to watch, but dang, was it really fun. And then we had Lando Venata against Bobby Green. I would argue that Lando Venata versus Bobby Green was the fight of the night. Yeah. There were several moments in this fight that I really thought like... So these two fought before in a Fight of the Year contender. It was like 3 years ago. And so Lando Venata, Bobby Green, they meet each other again. And it's a super fun fight. I say it's a fight of the night. A Fight of the Year candidates. It was just two dudes going right at it, unloading heavy bombs at each other. I'm looking at the fight stats right now. I'm surprised. So Bobby Green attempted practically nearly twice as many strikes as Lando. But Lando landed some really good shots here. Out of every fight in this entire card, Bobby Green versus Lando Venata had the most action. So the fight stats here, Lando Venata landed 46% of his total strikes, landed 64 of 139. Lando Venata landed 54 of 127, 42%, and attempted 1 takedown. No, he successfully landed 1 of 2 takedowns. Meanwhile, Bobby Green, yikes. He landed twice as many total strikes. Twice as many significant strikes. He landed 136 out of 219. Bobby Green attempted 80 more strikes than Lando. He landed 115 out of 195 significant strikes. Practically, he landed 68. He attempted 68 significant strikes. Landed more than twice as many significant strikes. The fact that Lando Venata was able to go press forward, I'm surprised. But all of the fight stats, they look kind of skewed. You read the fight stats and you're like, oh wow, Bobby Green obviously destroyed Lando. No. It was a very close fight. I see the first round. First round was an incredibly close fight. Second round was Bobby Green winning. Third round was obviously Bobby Green winning. Lando Venata, he threw everything at Bobby Green in that first round. That sadly, it just didn't carry over. Like, he didn't have the cardio. The dude was fighting still great by a third round. But even then, it wasn't enough against Bobby Green. I commend both fighters here. In my opinion, that was the best fight of the night. And I expect more from both of them. So Bobby, there's a lot of trash talk going on between these two fighters. And if you look at the image between like Bobby Green and Lando, you see like, so Herb Dean, he raises his arms. He goes, the winner of this fight, Bobby Green. Herb Dean brings up Bobby's arms, and Bobby Green just spits a whole bunch of water, and it looks like super cartoony. It really does. So I'm happy for both fighters being able to go make some money, and thank goodness they got some bonus money here. Because to me, that was the best fight of the night. So Bobby Green earned a win over Lando Venata on Saturday night at UFC Vegas 5. But both fighters secured a $50,000 bonus for winning Fight of the Night. The two competitors previously earned Fight of the Night honors in their first bout back at UFC 216. Oh, it wasn't a rematch 3 years later, resulted in another classic that went the distance. The other $50,000 bonus performance night came to Jennifer Maia and Vicente Lequay. Yeah, I say that. Lequay and Jennifer Maia were the two most impressive fighters of the UFC Fight Night events. But the most fun fight to watch was the Bobby Green and Lando. So that's my take for UFC Fight Night. I don't see where's Lequay going now in the rankings here, because in the post-fight interview, when everyone's talking about, oh, who are you gonna fight? Who are you gonna fight? Who are you gonna fight? Who are you calling out? Because trying to call out somebody after you win a fight, you're always gonna call out somebody who's like incredibly above you or someone much more higher in the totem pole. And he ended up challenging Nate Diaz. Vicente Lequay versus Nate Diaz. I'll be honest with you, I don't see this fight happening. I genuinely don't. Nate Diaz is such a huge name. And considering the fact that Nate Diaz, he has a lot of pride as it pertains to money fights. And I can see Nate Diaz agreeing a fight against Lequay, knowing that Lequay is not all that popular. He really isn't. Where is he in the rankings? So Nico Price is ranked right now 24. Lequay, at the time of this recording, is ranked number 17. Would it be a fun matchup for Nate Diaz against Lequay? Definitely. Fight of the Year candidates. I don't see either fighter getting knocked out. I really don't. It'll be two tanks going at it. Lequay reminds me a lot of Diego Sanchez. No. Two Diego Sanchez fighting each other would be Vicente Lequay versus Nate Diaz. It's a real possibility, but I don't really see it happening here. Well, most likely the rankings. So Neil Magny versus Jeff Neal. Neil Magny really dropping down. He's going to be fighting against Jeff Neal coming up August 29, just 3 weeks from now. Neal versus Magny. Magny looked awesome in his fight against Tony Martin. And when I compare that towards Jeff Neal has had impressive victories over really tough guys. Nico Price, Mike Perry, and Bilal Muhammad. Really tough hombres here. I say those three fighters are a lot more tougher than Neil Magny, but Neil Magny is just a more better complete fighter. So Magny versus Jeff Neal, who'd win that matchup? Magny looked as good as I've ever seen him since his Tony Martin fight. And off that basis there, and off the basis that Jeff Neal fought a version of Mike Perry that's not as good as he is right now, I'm gonna discredit that. So if Neil Magny can keep away the fights, uses huge length advantage he has over almost essentially all the fighters in the UFC welterweight division, Neil Magny should win. He should defeat Jeff Neal. Will it happen? I'm not really sure. But right below Neil Magny is Robbie Lawler. And right below him is RDA, Michael Chiesa, Stephen Thompson. We got former champions outside the top 10 in the rankings here. And it'll be really interesting to see where those fighters are going to land in the next upcoming fight cards. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after this short break here. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So it is coming in from MMAmania.com. Dana White guarantees Conor McGregor won't fight again in the year 2020 and has no plans to strip Jon Jones of the UFC title yet. Two of the Ultimate Fighting Championship's biggest stars, Jon Jones and Conor McGregor, are both currently taking time off from the fight game. Jon Bones Jones, the current light heavyweight champion, made waves a few months back after he says that he would vacate his title and take a year or two off after not getting the money he desired to fight Francis Ngannou. McGregor, meanwhile, once again called it a day in his combat career because he was bored of the fight game. Okay, so I don't believe Conor McGregor is retiring. No one believes Conor retired. It makes sense as to why he would retire. But then again, like, he's still a young man. He's still a young man. Like, what else is he gonna do in his life, really? For start, despite Jon Jones' willingness to give up his strap, White isn't in a huge hurry to strip his dominant champion of the 205-pound title yet. Not as of yet, no, said White regarding the possibility of relieving Jon Jones of his duty as light heavyweight champion. You know as much as I know. The last time he said he's not fighting, he's not fighting. We are filling this thing out, and when it's time for him to fight, we will see. As far as McGregor goes, White has already gone through a couple of alleged retirements from his biggest star ever. This year, he's retired. He doesn't have a fight this year, and we won't have a fight this year. Conor McGregor will not fight in 2020. I am not saying he won't fight in 2021, but I am telling you we don't have a plan. We don't have a fight planned for him in 2021. But I guarantee you he will not fight in 2020. Conor McGregor is retired. So yeah, you heard that there. The UFC, they can move on without Conor. They can definitely move on. There was people talking on social media, talking about Fight Island, and Dana was always bringing up that their Fight Island, what happened in Fight Island, was more popular and had more buzz and more money going into it, more than any other Conor McGregor fights. And a lot of people were throwing jabs at that. And there's also like news out there that Manny Pacquiao could be fighting against Conor McGregor. Alright, so I'm Filipino. I love Manny Pacquiao. I've been watching Manny Pacquiao since he fought Morales back in 2000, 2001-ish. And I'll tell you right now, dude, that ain't happening. Manny versus Conor. It's not gonna happen. Conor versus Conor versus Floyd Mayweather. I get it. Manny against Conor? Nah. I am not focused with, so this coming from, okay, I am not focused with anything with anybody that is not fighting. Conor McGregor is retired. Do we all believe he will stay retired? I think most of us don't believe that he will remain retired. Yeah, I don't agree that Conor McGregor is retired. I just don't. I 100% believe that he's not going to compete in the year 2020 because he has no need to. But yeah, strange. Very strange right now. Oh snap. So one of my personal fan favorites here, Tim Elliott, is facing suspension. Yikes. So Tim Elliott and Jamal Hill face suspension after failing drug tests for marijuana use. Two fighters are currently facing possible lengthy suspensions from the Nevada State Athletic Commission and SAC, as both Tim Elliott and Jamal Hill tested positive for marijuana stemming from in-competition drug tests. Both tests were administered for their respective fights at UFC on ESPN 9 on May 30 in Las Vegas, Nevada, which saw Elliott lose to Brandon Royval and Hill defeat Clifton Brow via knockouts. Hill's win will likely be overturned to a no contest, giving him the first blemish of his otherwise mid-career, which currently stands at 8-0, 2-0 in the UFC. Yikes. Per the ESPN report, both fighters are both temporarily suspended by the NSAC, and their sentences could be extended further at a later hearing. For now, both combatants are now facing disciplinary action from the NSAC and not the United States Anti-Doping Agency, which could obviously change at any moment. Tim Elliott goes on Twitter and he says, "Took a short notice fight. My bad." Okay, that's very strange here. It sucks that you kind of get penalized for taking a short notice fight. But then again, you know the rules. But also, I feel bad for any MMA fighter who has to somehow make money without being overly active or accepting short notice fights in order to make money in the year 2020 for the UFC. It's very, very difficult. I feel sad for Tim Elliott because I love Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott has to be one of the most quirkiest personalities out there. And it's sad to see, someone like him, he will not be given an opportunity soon to go and make some money somehow in the year 2020 because of him taking a short notice fight and him being caught with marijuana. So this is coming in from MMAmania.com that Khabib plans to drown very nice guy Justin Gaethje in the deepest ocean at UFC 254. So Khabib will make his long-awaited return to action on October 24, 2020 to defend his lightweight title against current interim champion Justin Gaethje at the location that is yet to be announced. It will probably be in the Apex facility building. So Joe Rogan says on this following Joe Rogan's Instagram post, Rogan says, "Awesome morning at the studio where I had the privilege of seeing the Savage Justin Gaethje and the Master Trevor Whitman on labs put in work. Thank you also to my brother in Muay Thai." Khabib goes on to respond, "Justin is a very nice guy and a good opponent for me, but when Octagon closes, he have to be ready. Not only boxing match, I am not Dustin or Tony. I will take him to the deepest ocean and drown him. Allah." Yikes. Well, we all know where this fight is going. So we all know, everyone in the world knows how Khabib versus Justin Gaethje, how that fight's gonna go. Bell rings. They both meet up in the middle of the octagon. Khabib might throw in some jabs, then go for a double leg takedown, or he's going to go shoot him for a double leg takedown. No matter what happens in this fight, within the first 30 seconds to a minute of this fight, Khabib will attempt a takedown. And so the story of this fight is Justin Gaethje's wrestling good enough to counter Khabib? And that's very interesting. Justin Gaethje has a background in collegiate wrestling. He competed at the highest level in collegiate wrestling. He can wrestle. He's a wrestler who transitioned into being a boxer. And the reason for that is because I hear all the time from Justin Gaethje where he says, I remember Justin Gaethje, he says, I don't miss wrestling. I'm happy that that's done. That's gone from my life. I don't want to do it ever again. And then you still hear Justin Gaethje saying, you know what, wrestling, it's not fun. Justin Gaethje doesn't like wrestling. But now he has to use wrestling in order to, combat and defeat his most toughest opponent yet. So, Gaethje versus Khabib. It's rumored that after this fight, it's going to be Khabib against Georges St. Pierre. And Georges St. Pierre says he's up for it. He's up for the matchup possibly happening. He's up for another impromptu title fight. And it's a really fun narrative here. One of the greatest of all time, like the greatest welterweight of all time, against the greatest lightweight of all time, in Khabib. Because at this point, I think Khabib has surpassed every record right now in the lightweight rankings as it pertains to his title reign. Like he's held the lightweight title longer than anybody else in UFC history. I think if he gets one more title defense, he may have broken the record. He may have broken the record for most title defenses ever in the UFC lightweight division. So right now, we could potentially see two GOATs from two different divisions fight each other. And it'll be awesome. It'll be totally awesome. We got the guy who has the most takedowns ever against the best wrestler in the UFC. That's still a possibility, but let's also not discredit Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje has all the tools to defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, he may have the tools, but are those tools good enough to truly defeat him? I don't know. We gotta check out. We gotta wait for it. I would love to see Justin Gaethje win the fights. I'm personally rooting for Justin Gaethje to go win the fights. Just because, I want to see somebody who can counter Khabib's wrestling. But also, man, I feel bad for Khabib. So I want to see the narrative of Khabib living up to his father's expectations and finally doing the thing that Khabib's dad wanted him to do. And that was retire undefeated 3-0. So my heart's kind of torn right between the middle there. And so it is coming in by MMAmania.com. We go to a former welterweight champion. Tyron Woodley expects Colby Covington to rely on racism, personal attacks to hype up upcoming UFC fights. So former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley is planning to face longtime rival and ex-teammate Colby Covington in a 170-pound grudge match at some point later this year, perhaps as soon as late September or early October. He says he's gonna vary to use everything in the mental warfare. Tyron Woodley told Mike Swick in a recent podcast, he's going to try to be racist, he's going to try to talk about stuff from my personal life, he's gonna bluff and make up shit about the gym, he's going to ask all these daggone questions, cause he was in St. Louis with me, so anything he can turn into something, he's going to use that. Guess what? I'm going to match him and make him look stupid. Alright. I'll just put this in right now. As a fan, I hate this. I hate this shtick. Tyron Woodley has to be one of the most hardest fighters to ever enjoy. And I agree with Dana White in that he has all the tools. He's pretty much a near perfect fighter. It comes across as if he doesn't really care about his career as an MMA fighter. And it's understandable. Because Tyron Woodley always talked about the money being ahead instead of the legacy. But Woodley's hard to watch. Colby Covington is cringy to watch. And I can guarantee you right now, there's nobody out there in mixed martial arts who is as sensitive as Tyron Woodley. I still remember him and his feud with Wonderboy Stephen Thompson, where Tyron Woodley throwing out jabs and insults. Like, he himself threw the race card on Wonderboy Stephen Thompson, which I find very strange that, like, Tyron Woodley is like, you know what? Colby Covington, he's going to say something racist to me, man. And you know what? It's not going to hurt. It's not going to budge. But yet, you know, Tyron Woodley, he threw racist insults towards Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. And it's going to be like, man. Do I think Colby Covington is going to use racist remarks on Woodley? I wouldn't be surprised. But this fight really, this is going to be one of those feuds that there's going to be a whole lot of talking, a whole lot of trash talking, and it's probably going to pop up in my feed as I talk about MMA news a lot. But I'm going to ignore it for the most part. I'm going to try to ignore it. It's just going to be two people insulting each other on Twitter. Two very sensitive fighters throwing out jabs at each other, throwing out insults as if like they're back at elementary school. Two fighters who are pretty much playing a character 24/7. So yeah, it's not gonna be a fun rivalry to follow, but the fight's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a very fun fight to watch. So it is coming in from MMAfighting.com that Eric Spicy released from UFC contract after dropping out of fight due to a botched weight cut. Yikes. So middleweight competitor Eric Spicy has been released from the UFC after he was forced out of a fight this past weekend at UFC Vegas 5. Spicy first announced the news on social media with his management team, later confirming the release to MMA Fighting. Alright, at UFC is coming in from his Twitter. This is goodbye again for now. Let's see if we can do a three-peat. Sorry to all my fans. The former Ultimate Fighter competitor was on a second stint with the promotion after he accepted a short-notice fight against Darren Wynn back in June 2019. While he took home a fight at the American Honors, Spicy never got the chance to compete for the UFC again after falling out of his scheduled bouts and having a fight cancelled due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Not exactly his fault. Spicy was then scheduled to fight against this past weekend against Marcus Perez due to problems with his weight cut. He got forced out of it. He later revealed on Twitter that he was struggling with his weight after starting a prescribed regimen of antidepressants following his fight with Wynn. For the sake of transparency, this was my first weight cut since starting antidepressants due to the head trauma I sustained in the Darren Wynn fight. Needless to say, it went horribly wrong and my fight is off. I will figure this problem out and hopefully be able to compete again. Now Spicy has been released from the UFC for the second time. I don't get how these fighters do it. I really don't. How can these fighters weight cut considering the current circumstances and the problems right now with social distancing, gyms being closed? How do they do it? Now there are some fighters who are able to get away with it, but then there are other fighters who just can't make the transition. I still remember Fabricio Verdum's, how the coronavirus pandemic really hit him hard, and he had an awful performance against Alexei Oleinik. So hopefully the future of Eric Spicy, it turns out well for him during the time of major uncertainty. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back. And so, the year of 2020, full of controversy. A whole lot of controversy, full of hot takes. And I found a very interesting forum here where it says, what are your MMA hot takes? Everyone has different opinions. Me being a huge basketball fan and MMA fan, I have very strong opinions as it pertains to certain topics and certain discussions. And I want to figure out what other people think. What are their hot takes? And I'll try to react to it. So, here's one hot take here. The sport of MMA is far less popular to the general public than most fans seem to think. Someone says 100%. In the UK, at least, most of the time when I explain why I'm tired on Sunday after sitting up watching fights, it goes something like this. Yeah, I follow MMA, UFC, like cage fighting, right? Oh, like Conor McGregor. No, it's, okay. For those of you who don't know, I'm currently working on a project right now where I'm trying to understand how popular mixed martial arts is to the young demographic of 18 to 30 years old. That's my main goal. I'm trying to figure out how appealing is mixed martial arts. Because right now, we live in a time where you can play video games and you can be super popular by not even saying anything interesting. That's just how things are. We can have somebody play a video game on Twitch, get 100,000 viewers, make a lot more, and they're going to be really popular. They'll get more views than, someone learning how to do a roundhouse kick or Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Like, who's more popular, PewDiePie or Conor McGregor? PewDiePie. Who's more popular, Ronda Rousey or Logan Paul? Logan Paul. That's a sad reality that the professional fighters who are being backed up by a billion-dollar organization are less popular than, these random people on the internet. That's the cold, hard facts. And so, honestly, 2 days from now, I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start doing the project. No, I already have started the project, but I'm going to be interviewing several young people, to go get their takes on mixed martial arts. But yeah, mixed martial arts in the grand scheme of things, not all that popular. People know what mixed martial arts is. People know the name. Like, people know Floyd Mayweather. People know Manny Pacquiao, but they don't know boxing. People know Conor McGregor. People know Chuck Liddell, but they don't know what they actually accomplish in the octagon. So yeah, mixed martial arts in UFC really isn't all that popular. And to be honest with you, as we move forward, more to the future, although money inflation has increased for the fighters, and that the talent pool right now of fighters is more talent than it's ever been before, I legitimately don't see mixed martial arts or UFC being a career that many people would want to have. Honestly, I predict that the talent level, that the sheer number of talented fighters is going to decrease as time goes on. I'm one of those, so I live in the California area. I studied in Northern California. I worked at the Silicon Valley. I studied in San Francisco. I worked in Los Angeles. I studied in Los Angeles. At least in the California area, if you're not making big money, you're not relative. I'm being blatantly honest with you. I've said this so many times where I got multiple friends who make huge money. I got a friend at the time, he was 26, and he was making $300,000 per year. And if you were to ask him, hey, man, you're rich, he would say, no, I'm not rich at all. Actually, I'm below average. I'm being underpaid. This person who's being paid $300,000 just to sit down in a chair to work 9 to 5 will go on to say that they're underpaid. I got another person, early 20s, making $115,000 per year as an engineer for Facebook. And if you ask her, hey, are you rich? They'll deny it. They'll say, no, I'm not rich at all. I'm actually being underpaid. So, these people in the California area will say that they're being underpaid or that they're making below average salary. Meanwhile, in the world of UFC, we got fighters who make $50,000 a year or $80,000 a year or sometimes even $20,000 a year. And as a fan of basketball, as a person who follows the field of science, as a person who follows, the education pathway because I have a background in education and teaching, the amount of money that the UFC brings in and takes out is so minuscule in the grand scheme of things that, yeah, MMA is not all that popular. It really isn't. Because if mixed martial arts was very popular, there wouldn't be so many fighters complaining about their income, and a lot of fighters would stop comparing themselves to LeBron James. Because although John Jones is the LeBron James of mixed martial arts, John Jones is making maybe 1/6 of what LeBron James is making. And then the can be like, well, John Jones can't really complain because, he's making more money than the average person in America. That's what I believe Dana White's thought process is, and that's a thought process for many people, many rich people and entrepreneurs that I personally know, where where somebody's gonna be paid $60,000 a year. I know somebody like this. Somebody got paid $60,000 a year, and in California, that's not all that much really. And they ask their boss, like, "Hey, why can't I get a pay raise?" And their boss will be like, "Guess what? You're making like a couple $1,000s more than the average salary in America. So you have to be appreciative of what you have." It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous what the thought process is for rich people. Strange. One person says here, for hot takes, my best friend unironically said that Henry Cejudo would beat Derek Lewis in a matchup because Lewis can't wrestle and wouldn't know what to do once he's in the ground. Alright then. Would Henry Cejudo defeat Derek Lewis in a fight? Would he? I would like to say yes, because Henry Cejudo and Derek Lewis have to be like two or more like appealing fighters to watch. They're so strange. One person says, he used his signature move against heavyweights. What makes your friend think stand the F up but won't work against someone half his weight? Yeah, it's not gonna happen. It is not gonna happen. Henry Cejudo is great and all, but I just don't see him fighting somebody as big as Derek Lewis and getting a takedown. If JDS, Junior Dos Santos, wasn't born premature, he would have been the greatest super heavyweight of all time. What do you mean born premature? That's weird. Connor's popularity with casual fans stems mostly from his accent. I'll be damned if us Americans don't love smooth-talking Irishmen. American accent Connor wouldn't be nearly as popular. Yeah, okay, I kind of agree with you there. There is something really appealing when you see a character that you just can't relate to, and that's very outwardly. Like, Conor McGregor is a very outwardly person. So is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Like, to my friends, I'm Filipino. I was born in Abu Dhabi, and I was Muslim. So, I did study Islam, and now I'm Mormon. And all my friends would go say, "Wow, man, you're very strange and weird. Like, what the heck, man? You're like Filipino, Middle Eastern, Islamic. What the heck? And Mormon at the same time? What's wrong with you? It's so weird." So, I am in agreement there that there are a lot of Americans that are very fascinated with people outside their own country, because it happens with me a lot. It happens with all my international friends, with my American friends. And if Conor McGregor was Chris Weidman, like he looked like Chris Weidman, he talked like Chris Weidman, I can guarantee he won't be all that popular. He really wouldn't. And the same for Khabib also. The game didn't catch up or surpass Rousey. Women's bantamweight is still a wasteland of a division, and outside of a handful of strikers, GDR, Nunes, Holm, Ronda could stomp a majority of the division. Is 135 a wasteland? How would Ronda Rousey do in the women's bantamweight division right now if she were to be slotted? Let's say peak Ronda Rousey. How would peak Ronda Rousey do in the women's bantamweight right now? Okay, so you have GDR, Jermaine Raname, Amanda Nunes, Holly Holm. I believe Aspen Ladd would give a run to Ronda Rousey. I really believe that. I think Ronda Rousey would do well for herself against Raquel Pennington. I think she would do well for herself against Juliana Pena, maybe. If Ronda Rousey were to compete now, and she's super motivated, I think Ronda Rousey can still be in the top 10 of the rankings. I think she can compete top 10 in the rankings, but I don't see her competing at the highest level at the top 5 rankings. I wouldn't call it wasteland, it's just a lot of unproven talent. Yoel Romero is actually horribly injured, and at the very end of his career, his neck is so messed up he will never initiate a takedown and never wants to grapple people. He has several fused discs and risks great pain, and he refused to go further in his fights knowing his injuries. Okay, that explains why. So there's a lot of people who want to say, Yoel Romero, he's a great wrestler. If he takes you down, man, oh man, you're done. But you don't see Romero recently in his recent fights in the past couple of years focus on his wrestling. You just don't see it happen. You see him doing flying knees, leg kicks, Superman punches, but you don't see him ever wrestle, despite his wrestling pedigree. And because of that, if Yoel Romero is purposefully not wrestling for the sake of preventing his injury getting even worsened, then yeah, it makes sense. Definitely does. Fabricio Verdun beats any version of Cain Velasquez, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he got himself knocked out by Derek Lewis. Beats any... Really? Would best version of Cain Velasquez versus the best version of Fabricio Verdun, who would win that fight? Huh. That's a hot take. I wouldn't know. I don't know who would win that fight. MMA has great athletes in it. No, not every NBA/NFL player would be a great fighter with training. Oh, that's true. So, I'll go as the MMA athletes aren't all that good relative to other athletes. If I were to bring out the best NBA and NFL player, okay, so if there were all NBA players and all NFL players, and they're matched up with all MMA fighters, and their goal was to go compete in these events like gymnastics, powerlifting, anything you would imagine them doing in an Olympic contest, like running, sprinting, high jump. Who do the best here? MMA fighters aren't all that great athletes. Yeah, there are great athletes in MMA, but compared to NBA and NFL players, not even close. Yes, not every NBA. You don't have to be a great athlete to be a great fighter. Who is more athletic? Who is more athletically gifted? LeBron James or Daniel Cormier? People have a tendency of overrating athleticism. Like right now, Zion Williamson, he can have a dunk, and for some reason, people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, wow, that's the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life." I believe athleticism is completely overrated unless the actual athlete is able to use athleticism for something in their own careers. So, if you're an athletic fighter, you better use your athleticism to go garner you a win in the octagon. But if you're an athletic dude, and you can do a somersault or a backflip, but then in an actual fight can't replicate anything close to your agility or to your movement or to your leg movements, or use any of your speed or any of your athleticism to go give you the victory in a fight, then it doesn't matter how athletic you are. It really doesn't. Because your athleticism is only useful if you're able to use it. If you have the athleticism and you don't really use it, then there's no point to it at all. So athleticism really is overrated by many, by sports media members, by fans, by athletes. But all because you're super athletic doesn't mean you're not a great fighter. And all because you're a great fighter doesn't mean you're super athletic. So it goes both ways there. And those are some hot takes over there. Feel free to go message me on what your hot takes are as it pertains to MMA. That also bring us to an end for today's episode. All I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.